Hello, my treasures. It's time for more cards for the March of the Lich King set to be revealed. And this time we are going to be covering some of the neutral cards. So let's begin. The first one that was revealed today is Amberwell, which is a 3-cost dragon neutral minion with 3 attack, 3 HP. Battlecry: if you're holding a dragon, deal 3 damage to this. There was a card very similar to this in Descent of Dragons that did not have the dragon tag, that didn't really see that much play back then. However, this does have the dragon tag, so it has synergy with itself, and it does have one more attack, so this is just a way better version of that card. I don't know if a aggro dragon deck is actually going to appear in the set, because stereotypically there aren't really that many dragons that are associated with Silvermoon itself. I could see maybe a bunch of Frostworms actually being printed for one of the Scourged allied classes instead, but if we don't see any additional dragons, this is just a generic really good dragon for any dragon deck that comes out in the future. All right, now for the next card, Blooded Knight, which is a 3-cost 4 attack 5 HP neutral minion, and at the end of your turn, deal 2 damage to your hero. Actually, a pretty decently statted minion. The downside might be a little bit annoying. I could see this being used in an aggro deck, or I could even see it used in a priest deck where you just negate the negative effect of this each individual turn by using your hero power instead. There's a lot of possibilities for a card like this. It's kind of boring to say, to be honest, but it is basically a better Shield Yeti or whatever that 4-drop from the classic set is actually called. And if you can get any type of silences, it becomes way, way better. So something like Priest could actually probably easily abuse this card. Again, it's just a really nice target for things like Silence Aggro Priest, or even something like a Miracle Priest where you're trying to buff this up as much as humanly possible. Just a nice statted minion for those styles of decks. Outside of that, I don't know how much play this will see. The next card revealed is Silvermoon Arcanus, which is a 3-cost 2 attack 2 HP neutral minion with spell damage +2. Battlecry: your spells cannot target heroes this turn. Now, if you have a way to actually cheat this out somehow instead of actually playing it where it'll trigger its Battlecry, this might be incredibly good, because it is 2 spell damage for the cost of 3 mana, which is actually pretty decent. The only other +2 spell damage card that we really have in standard right now is Guild Trader in the neutral pool, but that costs 1 more, though I do think that card is a lot more useful than a card like this. I don't think this one will probably see any type of play when it comes to trying to OTK your opponent with a bunch of spell damage, unless you have some really high impactful AoE spells that you can increase their damage by a ton, and I mean a ton. Then a card like this is not going to be too useful in a deck where it would normally want to be played in. Okay, the third card revealed is Silvermoon Armorer, which is a 4-cost 4 attack 4 HP rush minion with mana thirst 7, gain +2/+2. Now, the baseline stats of this minion aren't actually the strongest, but the mana thirst actually makes it a lot more flexible, which might mean it actually will see some play. I really like the mana thirst mechanic. It makes a lot of cards that you wouldn't really want to normally run in a bunch of decks be playable, because they do give you some type of late game strategy. This could be used as a late game strategy for a aggro base deck where you're using this on turn 4, you get a 4/4, but if you use it on turn 7, you get a 6/6, which isn't actually that bad, and gives you some late game board threats instead of just relying on a bunch of cheap minions that will always be really, really small. I don't think this one will probably see a lot of play, just because of the fact that sure, it's going to be a 6/6 on turn 7, but that really isn't that big nowadays in Hearthstone. All right, the next card revealed is Coroner, which is a 2-cost 2 attack 2 HP minion that has the Battlecry: freeze an enemy minion, mana thirst 6, silence it first. Kind of a weird card to include in this set, to be honest. It is another type of silence, however, it does require you to actually focus target one of your opponent's minions, and we are seeing a bunch of types of buffs, so this card could counteract some of the decks that actually like to buff up their minions by quite a lot. I don't think this one will see too much play, because baseline, its ability isn't really that important, and then its silence isn't even that important on turn 6. By the time you can get to turn 6 and the silence would actually matter, you are probably going to actually be dead from whatever your opponent actually buffs, and it's only a one target silence. Suffocating Starfish is just a way better type of AoE silence that you could run in a deck. Sure, it costs, I think, 1 or 2 more. It's been a while since I ran the card, but honestly, over this, if you're trying to use some type of neutral silence, that's the card for you, not a card like this. All right, the next card revealed is Sanctum Spellbinder, which is a 4 cost, 3 attack, 6 HP minion. Whenever your opponent targets another minion with a spell, redirect it to this. Now, if they're printing a card like this, it makes me wonder if there's going to be a lot of cards that are going to buff up minions that are currently actually on the board, or if this is something to just try to counteract some of the decks that are almost very meta relevant or kind of at the top of the list already that might be getting additional support, such as Naga Priest or Blessed Priest, depending on how you look at it. In a mirror match, this is going to be an incredibly funny card to actually play in a deck like that, but most of the time it is going to just be a 3/6 minion with no additional synergy, which might make this card not playable at all. However, it would be incredibly funny to try to play it because of the mind games that you could if you do run into a mirror match, or if decks like that become very relevant in the meta game. Either way, this is one of those cards that could be either really good or really bad, depending on what the other support in the set is going to be for some of the classes that historically have a bunch of buffs that they can give their minions on board, and how persistent those decks will be. The next card revealed is Crystal Broker, which is a 3 cost, 3 attack, 2 HP minion with Mana Thirst 5, summon a random 3 cost minion. Mana Thirst 10, summon an 8 cost minion instead. This is one of those cards that if you play it really early on, it basically is just a 3/2, which is actually not that good for a 3-drop minion anymore nowadays. So I don't know if it's going to be that useful there. However, it is a late game aggro tool that can give you an 8 cost minion that you might not normally have in a aggro based deck, and this could see play then. It has a lot of flexibility. Again, I really love the Mana Thirst mechanic, as it does increase the flexibility of a bunch of cards to make them playable in decks that might not normally want to consider them. I do think this one might be a little bit of a pack filler, just because it is basically a vanilla if you don't have the Mana Thirst, but if you can actually manage to get a Mana Thirst 10 off of this, then you are in a really good position, because you get 8 mana basically for free, and you still have 7 mana to do whatever else you want to do on that given turn. And I think the pool of 8 cost minions is small enough right now that you would get a pretty consistent 8-drop minion off of something like this. All right, and now for the next card revealed, Enchanter, which is a 3 attack, 3 HP, 3 cost neutral minion. Enemy minions take double damage during your turn. Reminds me actually of the Ashen Tongue Morgor Artificer combo that you could actually pull when both of those cards were still in rotation. I don't think this card will probably see that much play because of the fact that neither of those cards are still in rotation. Same thing with Silas. So there's no way you can easily abuse a card like this where you can make your opponent take a bunch of face damage by giving them a minion that causes them to take the damage instead. But it is a really funny card, and maybe could be used in a class that doesn't normally have a bunch of AoE and maybe has a really small AoE that they could put out. And then you can double the damage with something like this, maybe getting the honorable kill on everything using the 1 Demon Hunter AoE that gives you 1 attack whenever you do get honorable kill. But outside of situations like this, I think this is really probably the worst epic that we've seen so far for this set, which is a little bit of a shame. It also does look like most of the neutral cards are going to be centered around Silvermoon instead of the Scourge, which I guess makes sense, but it would have been cool to see some Scourge-based higher rarity cards too. So far, everything has been a Blood Elf or High Elf, depending on how you look at it. Next card revealed is Oxstrider Rancher, which is a 3 cost, 2 attack, 5 HP minion that after you play a minion, give it +1/+1, and the death rattles to summon a 1/1 Oxstrider. Really, really good for Death Knights. It basically makes every minion generate you 2 corpses instead of 1. It has an incredibly good stat line for its body. You could probably also use this in something like Hunter or Druid, depending on what you actually want to. for some additional beast synergy, though it could lower the consistency of something like Revive Pet, but most people have cut those out of their deck anyway at this point. I don't see a world where this doesn't see any play because of the additional synergy, again, with Death Knights and the corpses, or even with things like Secret Mage with Infuse. Basically turns every minion that you possibly play down into 2 bodies, which is absolutely insane with some of the mechanics that they've been introducing into this game very recently. And it's going to be incredibly hard to actually deal with. I don't know why they decided to give it 5 HP. That seems a little bit overboard for a card like this. And really, it could be a lot weaker and it would still probably see a lot of play. For example, if you lowered the stats to maybe a 2-3, I think it would still probably see some type of play. All right, now for the final card revealed, it is Aleister Floodsworn, which is originally a 2-cost minion with 2 attack, 2 HP. The battle cry, add Aleister the Protector to your hand, and if there's 4, deal 2 damage. Then Aleister the Protector, which is a 5-cost minion with the battle cry, add Aleister the Flamebringer to your hand, mana if there's 7, gain 5 armor. And then finally, we have Aleister the Flamebringer that deals 8 damage randomly split among all enemies, and if there's 10, deal 8 more. Now, this is another one of those cards that could be really, really annoying to actually deal with if Bran is still in rotation, and he will be for at least the first 3 months of this card's existence. Sure, you're going to have to run a card that gives you 1 additional mana to use a card like this in combination with that, but I still think this would be still incredibly playable. And while you're probably not going to always get the Mana Thirst actually off, this is a perfect card to represent the Mana Thirst mechanic as a whole, because this does curve incredibly well with itself whenever you do try to get the Mana Thirst combo off. If you wait till turn 4 to actually play him down, you will get his deal 2 damage, but then you can also wait till turn 7 to get 5 armor, or you could just play him down on turn 5 instantly, depending on how you want to do it. Stat line isn't really that bad if you don't gain the armor. Then finally, the one that you probably will always want to get the Mana Thirst off of is Aleister the Flamebringer, but if you don't really need to get the 8 additional damage, you could just slam him down on turn 8 and then have an 8/8 body that dealt 8 damage to your opponent, which could, in theory, just kill your opponent outright if you do get the Mana Thirst off. I don't actually know if anything outside of the final version of this card actually does enough to make it see a lot of play, but it should see at least a little bit of play because the final version does do 32 damage when comboed with Bran, as mentioned before. Alright, so those were all the cards revealed today. Let me know which ones you're looking most forward to, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.